Chosen, it's no accident that you're hearing these words right now. There's something within you that has always known you were different. From an early age, you may have felt like you didn't quite fit into the molds that the world tried to impose. This feeling isn't a mistake or a flaw in your personality. It's a whisper, a silent calling that echoes in your spirit. Welcome to a journey of self-discovery that goes beyond the ordinary, an exploration of the signs that mark those who carry a unique purpose. If you've always wondered why you feel different, you might be about to find answers that your heart has always sought. We're not talking about superiority, but about a unique calling that sets you apart for a greater purpose. You're not alone on this journey. There are many like you scattered across the world, carrying invisible marks of a divine purpose. These are people who feel, perceive, and experience life differently. People who often don't understand why they can't simply fit in with the crowd. People like you. Today we'll explore 7 mysterious signs that often mark those chosen by God. Signs that may have caused confusion, questioning, or even loneliness in your life, but which are actually indicators of something much deeper and more meaningful. Before we continue, I want to ask you to participate in this journey with us. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and leave the comment "I recognize my divine calling" as a first step in affirming your unique purpose. Now, prepare your heart and mind for a revelation that can completely transform how you see your differences. Imagine for a moment that what has always made you feel strange or out of place isn't a defect but an intentional design. That every unique characteristic you possess, every unusual sensitivity, every thought that goes beyond the conventional is actually a mark, a seal of a unique heavenly calling. This is the beginning of a new understanding of who you are. A journey to recognize, embrace, and fully live the purpose for which you were created. Let's discover together the divine signs that mark those chosen by God. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where, without any logical explanation, you felt an immediate and deep connection with a complete stranger? That moment when your eyes meet in a crowded room and, inexplicably, you feel like you've known that person for years. This is the first sign that marks those chosen by God, a supernatural connection with strangers that seems orchestrated by a higher power. For the chosen, these encounters aren't empty coincidences. They're divine moments disguised as chance. You walk down the street and feel an inexplicable urge to change direction, only to meet someone who needed exactly the words you had to offer. Or maybe you pop into a store at the last minute and chat with a clerk who shares exactly the life experience you needed to hear at that moment. These seemingly random encounters carry a purpose that transcends chance. The problem is that our society has trained us to distrust immediate connections. We've been taught to build walls, to keep our distance, to question intentions, and so many of the chosen stifle this gift, ignoring that inner voice that prompts them to reach out to a stranger, to offer a word of comfort, to start a conversation. That could be transformative for both of you. This special sensitivity often causes confusion. Have you ever wondered, why do I feel so connected to this person I just met? Or why do I feel like I need to talk to that specific person in a room full of people? You may have even been labeled as naive or overly trusting for following these intuitions. But what others see as naivety is actually a heightened perception that goes beyond appearances. For the chosen, these encounters are rarely superficial. They carry a weight, a meaning, an exchange of energy that leaves both parties transformed. Do you notice how some conversations with strangers remain vividly in your memory years later, as if that brief moment had been etched into your soul? This happens because such encounters aren't merely human. They're divine bridges built between souls who needed to connect at a specific moment. This ability isn't for you to feel special or superior. It's a tool, a gift that has been entrusted to you for a greater purpose, to be a channel, an instrument of connection in an increasingly disconnected and individualistic world. It's a sacred responsibility that requires discernment and wisdom. Reflect for a moment. How many times have you ignored that impulse to speak to someone because it seemed strange or inappropriate? How many divine opportunities may have gone unnoticed because you chose social convenience over following that inner prompting? The chosen often serve as divine meeting points, as crossroads where lives that need to meet converge. even if briefly. If you recognize this sign in your life, know that it's no coincidence. It's part of your calling, your unique mark as one, chosen to connect, heal, and restore through encounters that the world calls chance, but that bear the divine signature of purpose. The second sign that marks those chosen by God is an extraordinarily keen spiritual intuition, an almost prophetic ability to discern situations and people beyond what the physical senses can perceive. Have you ever experienced that inexplicable feeling of knowing something without knowing how you know it? That deep understanding that arises in your spirit without any tangible evidence to support it. For many of the chosen, this spiritual intuition manifests as an inner knowing that transcends conventional logic. You walk into a room and immediately sense the emotional and spiritual atmosphere of the place. You meet someone, and without them saying a word about their life, you perceive their inner struggles, their unexpressed pains, their hidden conflicts. This perception doesn't come from psychological analysis or detailed observation. It's knowledge that simply appears in your spirit. The world often labels this ability as paranormal, mystical, or at best, exceptionally good intuition. Some may have even suggested that you develop this psychic gift, but what you feel isn't a supernatural ability in the mystical sense. It's spiritual discernment, a sensitivity to the realities that exist beyond the veil of the physical world. This keen intuition often places the chosen in internal conflict. On one hand, you have this deep knowledge that you can't rationally explain. On the other, you live in a society that values concrete evidence, tangible data, and logical explanations. Have you ever felt uncomfortable for knowing something about a situation or person without being able to articulate how you obtained that information? Have you questioned your own sanity when your intuitive perceptions have repeatedly proven correct? The biggest challenge for the chosen with this sign is learning to trust this discernment without allowing pride or fear to distort its purity. It's tempting to use this sensitivity to impress others or to feel superior. It's equally tempting to completely suppress this intuition for fear of judgment or rejection. Both extremes represent a deviation from the purpose of this gift. This keen spiritual intuition wasn't granted for you to predict the future like an oracle or to judge the hearts of others. It exists to guide you on your journey and to allow you to offer understanding, compassion, and direction precisely where they are needed. It's an instrument of healing and guidance, not of display or condemnation. Think of the times when your intuition led you to pray for someone specific, only to discover later that that person was going through a crisis at that very moment. Or when you felt a strong urge to change your plans, thus avoiding a situation that later proved harmful. These aren't coincidences, they're manifestations of your keen spiritual sensitivity. The chosen often serve as spiritual sentinels, perceiving what others can't see, feeling what others can't feel, understanding what others can't understand. If you identify with this sign, recognize it not as a strange curiosity, but as a sacred tool that has been entrusted to you for a purpose that transcends the ordinary, to bring light where there is darkness, clarity where there is confusion, and truth where there is deception. The third sign that distinguishes the chosen is an extraordinarily high emotional and spiritual sensitivity, an ability to perceive and absorb the emotions of others and spiritual atmospheres with an intensity that surpasses the common experience. Chosen, have you ever wondered why you feel everything so deeply? Why the emotions of others seem to transfer to your own being, as if there were no boundaries between you? For many who carry this mark, entering an emotionally charged environment can be an overwhelming experience. You pick up not only what's being said, but the underlying emotional currents, the non-verbalized tensions, the feelings that others are trying to hide. A simple family gathering, a work meeting, or even a trip to the mall can turn into an intensely exhausting experience, with all these emotions and energies competing for your attention. This heightened sensitivity is both a precious gift and a heavy burden. It's a gift because it allows for genuine and deep empathy. You don't just intellectually understand the pain of others, you feel it viscerally. This creates a unique ability to comfort, support, and heal. But it's also a burden, because living with such emotional intensity can be draining and confusing, Often you may find it difficult to distinguish your own emotions from those you're picking up from others. The modern world rarely understands or values this sensitivity. In a culture that celebrates cold logic, impersonal efficiency, and emotional objectivity, the chosen with this mark are often labeled as dramatic, overly sensitive, or emotionally unstable. Have you ever been advised to toughen up, to not take everything so seriously, or to not be so sensitive? These words may have caused deep wounds, making you question whether there is something fundamentally wrong with your way of experiencing the world. The truth is that your sensitivity isn't a defect to be corrected. It's a divinely calibrated tool for a greater purpose. In an increasingly desensitized world, where apathy has become a survival strategy, the chosen with this mark serve as the emotional sensors of humanity, keeping alive the ability to feel deeply, to care intensely, to love completely. The challenge for the chosen isn't to eliminate this sensitivity, but to learn to manage it wisely. How do you distinguish between healthy empathy and harmful emotional absorption? How do you remain open and sensitive without becoming emotionally overwhelmed? How do you use this gift to heal without being consumed by the wounds you perceive in others? This heightened sensitivity also manifests in the spiritual realm. You probably perceive the spiritual atmosphere of places, the peace that permeates certain environments, the unexplained discomfort in others, the feeling of oppression or freedom that can't be attributed to physical factors. This keen perception isn't superstition or imagination. It's a real awareness of the dimensions that exist beyond what the eyes can see. Recognize that this intensified emotional and spiritual sensitivity is an intentional part of your design. It wasn't a mistake in the calibration of your soul. It was a deliberate choice to equip you for a specific mission, to bring emotional healing, deep understanding, and spiritual restoration to a world that desperately needs these gifts. Your sensitivity isn't your weakness. It's your most distinctive strength. The fourth sign that marks those chosen by God is a natural and inexplicable affinity with children and animals, a magnetic connection that transcends common interactions. Have you ever noticed how children who are normally shy with strangers feel immediately at ease in your presence? Or how animals, even the most skittish, seem to trust you instinctively? This special affinity isn't just a matter of liking children or animals, it's something much deeper. It's as if these beings, who possess a perception that is purer and unfiltered by cynicism and social conditioning, can see something in you that many adults don't perceive. They respond not to your external behavior or your words, but to the essence of your spirit. Children often gravitate toward you at social gatherings, choosing your company among dozens of available adults. They share secrets, ask deep questions they wouldn't ask others, and demonstrate an instinctive trust that can't be manufactured or forced. This special connection often leaves parents and observers perplexed. She never acts like this with strangers, or he's usually so shy. I don't understand why he's so at ease with you. With animals, the experience is equally remarkable. Dogs that normally bark at visitors become calm in your presence. Cats that typically hide when strangers arrive may come to snuggle on your lap. Even wild or injured animals seem to sense that you pose no threat. This connection goes beyond simply having a way with animals. It's a silent communication, a wordless language that flows between you and these creatures. This gift can be disconcerting or even embarrassing in certain contexts. Perhaps you found yourself in situations where children or animals have demonstrated such an obvious preference for you that it caused awkwardness or jealousy in other adults. You may have even tried to diminish this connection to avoid appearing presumptuous or hurting the feelings of others. What few understand is that this special affinity exists because children and animals possess a perception that isn't obscured by layers of social pretense. They respond to authenticity, to genuine kindness, and to the inner peace that the chosen often carry. They sense, on an intuitive level, the light that dwells within you, even when you yourself have difficulty recognizing it. This connection isn't accidental. It's a reflection of the purity of spirit that the chosen cultivate, consciously or not. Children and animals respond to your authenticity because they themselves exist in a state of natural authenticity, not yet corrupted by the social masks that most adults learn to wear. There's a deep purpose in this gift. The chosen often serve as bridges between worlds, the adult world with its complexities and the simpler, more direct world of children and animals. You have the ability to translate the simple wisdom of these beings to an adult world that desperately needs to relearn sincerity, trust, and presence in the moment. This natural affinity also serves as a mirror for your own spiritual journey. The ease with which children and animals trust you is a reminder of the trust that you yourself are called to develop. A simple, direct, and complete faith, free from the complications that the adult mind often creates. The fifth distinctive sign of those chosen by God manifests in the silence of the night, the nightly spiritual awakenings. Have you ever found yourself consistently waking up at specific times in the early morning hours without any apparent reason? Maybe it's at 3 a.m., 4:15 a.m., or another precise time that repeats night after night. These aren't simple episodes of insomnia or sleep disturbances. They're nightly calls that carry a deep meaning. For many of the chosen, the early morning hours become a sanctuary of encounter, a sacred space where the inner voice can finally be heard without the distractions of the waking world. When the rest of humanity sleeps, when the veil between the world seems thinner, you find yourself awake with heightened mental clarity and spiritual receptivity. These consistent awakenings often cause initial frustration. In a society that values uninterrupted rest and associates a full night's sleep with productivity, regularly waking up in the early morning hours is seen as a problem to be solved, a disturbance to be medicated. You may have consulted doctors, tried relaxation techniques, or tried various sleep aids, all in an attempt to fix something that in reality isn't broken. What conventional wisdom doesn't understand is that these nightly awakenings for the chosen aren't disturbances, they're invitations. Invitations to a type of communion, reflection and perception that's only possible when the world is quiet and your mind isn't occupied with the thousand worries of the day. There's a reason why spiritual traditions throughout history have valued nighttime vigils and early morning prayers. There's a special kind of clarity available in those silent hours. During these moments of nighttime vigil, many of the chosen experience their deepest intuitions, receive their clearest understandings, and feel a more direct connection with the divine. Creative ideas arise, solutions to complex problems manifest, and a deeper understanding of your own path is revealed. It's as if the stillness of the night opens a channel of communication that remains obscured during the turmoil of the day. Often these awakenings come accompanied by an inexplicable urge to pray, meditate, or simply be present in a state of receptivity. You feel that there's something important to be received, understood, or accomplished at that specific moment. And when you respond to that calling, instead of fighting against it, you discover a treasure of peace, insight, and spiritual strengthening. Many of the chosen report that during these nightly awakenings they feel an impulse to intercede for specific people, friends, family, or even strangers who cross their path during the day. Without fully understanding why, you find yourself praying intensely for someone, only to discover later that that person was going through a crisis precisely at that early morning hour. The challenge for the chosen isn't to cure these awakenings, but to learn to honor them and to utilize them as the gift that they are. Instead of getting frustrated when you wake up at 3:15 a.m., you can transform that moment into a sacred encounter, a time set aside to nurture your connection with the divine and with your own spirit. These nightly awakenings serve as reminders that you're attuned to rhythms that go beyond the conventional clock. You're living in harmony with a different kind of time, the sacred time that transcends the limitations of day and night. The sixth sign that distinguishes the chosen is a singular relationship with solitude, a deep and invigorating comfort in moments of isolation that, instead of draining your energy, paradoxically restores and amplifies it. Have you ever noticed how, unlike many around you, you don't fear being alone? How there are times when you deeply crave that space of solitude, not out of misanthropy, but out of an almost physical need for inner reconnection. For the chosen, Solitude isn't a state of abandonment or lack. It's a necessary sanctuary, a sacred space where a special kind of spiritual nourishment occurs. While many in modern society experience loneliness as a painful void to be filled at any cost, you discover in it a rich presence, an eloquent silence that speaks directly to your soul. This characteristic often causes misunderstanding and even conflicts in your relationships. Friends and family may interpret your need for isolation as personal rejection. Why do you always need so much time alone? Don't you enjoy our company? Is something wrong with you? Questions like these may have become painfully familiar. In a culture that celebrates constant extroversion and social hyperconnectivity, your comfort with solitude can be seen as strange or even problematic. This social detachment doesn't mean that you don't value human connections. On the contrary. The chosen often form deep and meaningful relationships precisely because they don't desperately depend on these connections to fill an inner void. You're able to be genuinely present with others precisely because you're comfortable with yourself. Your relationships tend to be more authentic and less based on need or codependency. What many don't understand is that your apparent aloofness isn't emotional coldness. It's a legitimate need for processing and integration. As someone who often intensely absorbs the energies and emotions around you, as we saw in the third sign, you need these moments of solitude to recalibrate your being, to separate what is truly yours from what you've absorbed from others, to restore your energetic and emotional boundaries. Historically, those with deep spiritual callings have always sought solitude as an essential part of their journey. From the desert hermits to the contemplative monks, from the prophets who retreated to mountains to the mystics who found the divine in silence, there's a long tradition of recognizing the transformative and revelatory power of voluntary solitude. The challenge for the chosen isn't to eliminate this need for solitude, but to find a healthy balance between withdrawal and engagement. How do you honor your legitimate need for personal space without completely isolating yourself? How do you communicate this need to your loved ones in a way that they can understand that it's not about rejection, but about spiritual self-care? In your moments of solitude, you often experience intensified clarity, creativity, and spiritual connection. Ideas arise, understandings crystallize, and you feel a reconnection with your deepest purpose. These aren't moments of evasion from reality. They're moments of encounter with a more fundamental reality, more essential than the superficial distractions of everyday life. This comfort in solitude is a crucial tool for your journey as one of the chosen. It's in the moments of silence and recollection that you often receive the clearest directions for your path, that your keen spiritual intuition can operate without interference, and that your spirit can realign with its divine purpose. The seventh sign that marks those chosen by God is an extraordinary resilience in the face of adversity, an inner strength that defies conventional explanations and that often surprises even those who possess it. Have you ever wondered how you manage to get through periods of intense suffering that would have completely destroyed other people? How, despite repeated falls, you always find a way to get up again? This supernatural resilience doesn't mean an absence of pain or immunity to suffering. The chosen often experience intense trials, deep losses, and challenges that test the limits of their endurance. The difference lies in how they respond to these adversities, with a tenacity that seems to come from a source beyond their own strength. While many are completely destabilized by crises, you seem to possess an unshakable core that remains intact even when everything around you crumbles. This isn't a personality trait that can be explained solely by psychological or genetic factors. It's a spiritual anchor, a connection with something eternal that sustains you when the storms of life threaten to sink you. This extraordinary resilience often confuses those around you. How can you keep going after everything you've been through? I would have given up completely if I were in your place. I don't understand where your strength comes from. Comments like these may have become familiar in your journey. What others don't understand is that your resilience doesn't come from stoicism or emotional denial. It comes from a deeper source, a connection with a purpose that transcends your immediate challenges. Paradoxically, Many of the chosen experience levels of adversity that seem disproportionate. It's as if life tests them repeatedly, as if the fire of refinement burns more intensely in their lives. These trials aren't punishments, they're forges, refining processes that temper your spirit, that develop qualities that couldn't be formed in more comfortable circumstances. Ancient wisdom recognizes that gold is tested in fire and the chosen in the furnace of adversity. The same circumstances that break some forge others into instruments of extraordinary beauty and usefulness. The scars you carry aren't just marks of injury. They're testimonies of healing, evidence of a regenerative capacity that surpasses the ordinary. The challenge for the chosen isn't to deny this resilience through false humility, nor to attribute it exclusively to your own efforts. It's to recognize it as a gift that has been entrusted to you not only for your own survival, but to inspire and strengthen others. Your battles won, your impossible recoveries, your personal resurrections after devastating losses, all serve as living testimonies of possibilities that many don't believe exist. This supernatural resilience doesn't mean that you never question, that you never doubt, that you never fall. It means that, even in the deepest darkness of the dark night of the soul, a small flame continues to burn within you, the flame of hope, of faith, of purpose that refuses to be extinguished. It's this flame that often serves as a beacon for others who have become lost in the darkness of their own trials. The chosen often discover that their greatest wounds transform into their greatest gifts to the world. The pain that could have hardened them makes them more compassionate. The challenges that could have embittered them make them wiser. The losses that could have paralyzed them propel them with a deeper purpose. The journey of one of the chosen isn't linear or instantaneous. It's a gradual process of recognizing, accepting, and embracing the divine calling. This path often begins with confusion and even resistance to the signs we've explored. You've probably gone through distinct phases in your own journey of self-discovery, moving from denial to curiosity, from resistance to surrender, and finally to full acceptance of who you were created to be. Many of the chosen spend years, sometimes decades, trying to suppress their differences. You may have worked hard to normalize your experiences, to fit into conventional molds, to silence that inner voice that insisted you were made for something different. This phase of resistance is understandable. Being different can be painful in a world that celebrates conformity and is suspicious of what it can't easily categorize. The turning point often comes after repeated failed attempts to live a normal life. There comes a moment when the tension between who you truly are and who you're trying to be becomes unsustainable. This existential crisis, though painful, is necessary. It's the moment when you begin to seriously consider the possibility that your differences aren't accidents or defects, but essential aspects of your design. The exploration phase that follows this crisis is marked by a renewed curiosity about your unique experiences. You begin to investigate the meaning behind the signs that have always been present in your life. Instead of dismissing them as strange, coincidences, or personal quirks, you begin to see them as clues on a map, indicating a unique path that has been traced specifically for you. The real challenge in this exploration phase is to discern the truth amidst the noise. In your search for understanding, you may encounter distorted or exaggerated interpretations of the signs you carry. Some may try to convince you that your experiences are purely psychological, while others may push you toward sensationalized supernatural explanations. Wisdom lies in remaining open without being naive, in seeking understanding without clinging to narratives that don't genuinely resonate with your lived experience. As you advance on this journey, an integration begins to occur. You stop seeing your signs as isolated phenomena and begin to perceive them as interconnected parts of a coherent whole. Your heightened emotional sensitivity fuels your keen intuition. Your comfort in solitude nurtures your resilience. Your nightly awakenings strengthen your connection with strangers. The signs that once seemed disconnected reveal themselves as complementary facets of a unified purpose. This integration leads to the acceptance phase, not a passive resignation to your fate, but an active and conscious embrace of your calling. You begin to see your differences not as burdens to be endured, but as tools that have been entrusted to you for a specific job that only you can accomplish in the unique way you've been equipped to do it. The final phase of this journey is that of lived purpose, the moment when you move from merely accepting who you are to fully living from that authentic identity. Your differences cease to be something you try to explain or justify, and become the very source of your unique contribution to the world. You discover that what made you feel strange or out of place is precisely what empowers you to touch lives in a way that no one else could. Chosen One, we've reached the end of this journey of recognition and revelation. The 7 signs we've explored together, the supernatural connection with strangers, the keen spiritual intuition, the heightened emotional and spiritual sensitivity, the inexplicable affinity with children and animals, the nightly spiritual awakenings, the comfort in solitude, and the supernatural resilience in the face of adversity, aren't random coincidences in your life. They're intentional marks, divine fingerprints that reveal not only who you are, but what you were created for. For too long, you may have seen these characteristics as strange burdens, as inexplicable peculiarities that separated you from others and made your journey more difficult. Today I invite you to a profound transformation of perspective, to see these signs not as obstacles in your path, but as the very map that reveals your unique direction. Being chosen doesn't mean being superior to others. It means carrying a specific responsibility, a particular calling that requires exactly the unique tools with which you've been equipped. Your difference isn't a mistake in the design. It's the very point of the design. You're not strange by accident, but unique by intention. The world desperately needs what only you can offer in the unique way you were made to offer it. In an Bhavadi, era of increasing conformity, of superficial connections, of diluted spirituality and manufactured identities, your authenticity as one of the chosen represents a rare and essential light. Your sensitivity in an increasingly insensitive world, your intuition in a culture obsessed with cold logic, your ability to connect genuinely in a society of disposable relationships, your resilience in times of widespread fragility, all these qualities don't exist despite the divine plan, but precisely because of it. The invitation before you today isn't to finally fit in, but to finally accept that maybe you were never meant to fit in. You were made to stand out, not out of pride or exhibitionism, but for purpose and intentional design. Imagine for a moment what would happen if you stopped apologizing for your sensitivity and started using it as the instrument of healing that it was intended to be. If instead of trying to suppress your intuition, you honored it as the inner compass that it is. If instead of seeing your need for solitude as a social failing, you embraced it as the necessary sanctuary for your spiritual renewal. From today on, I invite you to a new journey, no longer that of questioning or doubting the signs you carry, but that of embracing them fully, of refining them consciously, and of utilizing them intentionally for the purpose for which they exist. Before we conclude, I want to ask you to take a moment to share this video with someone who you intuitively feel may also carry these signs, but perhaps hasn't yet found the language to understand them. Leave a comment sharing which of these signs resonates most deeply with your own experience. Subscribe to our channel to continue this journey of discovery and purpose. Chosen One, you're not strange, you're extraordinary, not by accident, but by design. Don't carry your differences as a burden, but as a seal, a sacred mark of your unique calling in the grand tapestry of existence.